So, June is here. Pride Month! Yay! And what comes with Pride Month? Discourse and community infighting. Less yay! Let's talk about the word queer, because the sheer number of people going like queer is a slur is frightening, and none of you know your history. Also, I will use queer instead of LGBT+ during this video, because I am much more comfortable with queer personally. Let's start with the meaning of the word queer. It is not as historically charged as dyke, for example. Don't get on my back. I am allowed to say that. I am a lesbian with a few extra steps, but still a lesbian. If I heard people say that word to address the whole community, my reaction would be something along the lines of, "Oh wow, that's a super loaded word with a lot of negative feelings behind it. Maybe don't use it for people who will be hurt and offended by your using it, because that's a really shitty thing to do." That's how the Queer the Slot crew reacts when we're using it, but the problem is the history behind the idea that queer is a slur. It all starts with political lesbians. Political lesbians are basically a bunch of women who believe that whatever their sexual orientation, women should cut all ties and contacts with the evil men. According to them, women are the correct sex to date, and all lesbian relationships are pure, good and unproblematic by essence, especially when there is no sex or lust involved. The problem that arises for them with the queer community is that some of the members date men, or worse, are men. Others are into the wrong kind of sex, or just like sex too much, and some justify the very definition of sex, relationships and gender. So yeah, not very good for the political lesbians' ideology. We now arrive in the 1980s and 90s. Nice! And you know another thing that's nice? Queer theory. An organized attempt by queer people in academia and superior education to come together and discuss the oppression faced by the community, which includes the men in our community, cue very angry political lesbians, such as Shayla Jeffrey, who published articles such as The Queer Disappearance of Lesbians. And those political lesbians argued that, since queer theory said it was okay to love men or even be men, it was inherently dangerous, problematic, and destructive. A very nuanced take, as we love them, huh? And this idea still exists today through terfs and red femmes, or the existence of labels like Gold Star Lesbian, for example, a lesbian who has never been with a man in her whole life, and thus perceives herself as better than other lesbians. Cue the Gold Star. So, in such a context, queer was and is a shield. People who call themselves queer were so much more likely to be accepting. Queer was one of the only labels that actually accepted bisexuals and NBs. Think of ace-hetero discourse, for example. Gender-critical people, even today, queer still is the only label in which people don't try to push you out. In the 2000s, nobody had any problems with the word. About 10 years ago, only terfs and red femmes pushed their queer the slur agenda. They admitted that they said that because they didn't want to be lumped with trans and bi people. The whole community and the allies protested. But the red femmes are now much more covert with their reasons. And the idea that queer the slur has taken root in a big part of the community. Don't let exclusionists take our words and our tools. Do not listen to bigots. We're here, we're queer. Get used to it. On a side note, you can not want to be called queer. Just say so and we will respect that. Just say, I am not comfortable with queer used for me, and not queer is a slur, because that's what we have a problem with. Don't throw your siblings under the bus to cater to bigots. They may not be targeting you now, but if you're not say hello, you're next on their list.